So this morning we have a demo of Bolster Academy, I think made by the people behind Sowieso, led by Adam Smallwood. Adam's going to give a bit of a presentation, then a demo. There will be opportunities for questions. You can also put questions on the Moodle site, which we might read out some at the end, and then maybe some of the Bolster Academy team can answer those later on if any more come in. Okay, so I think I'll just hand over to Adam. You've got the whole session to yourself, so off you go. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks a lot, Christian. And you're quite right as well. Bolster Academy is simply the international name of Sowieso. Sowieso doesn't travel too well in terms of pronunciation, so that's the reason behind that one. But yeah, hi everyone. I'll just share my screen. Bear with me one moment. Hopefully you can all see that. But yeah, as Christian said, we'll run through a demo shortly. But we wanted to do this through the lens of unlocking the potential of formative assessment with digital technology. So my name's Adam Smallwood. I'm the head of partnerships at Bolster Academy, and I work with our university partners to really make sure they get the most out of our platform when implementing it for their classes at university or college level. I'm actually delivering this on behalf of my colleague Lars van Boyen. You may have seen him on the agenda previously. Unfortunately, he's not well, so I've just stepped in. So Lars is one of our math editors at Bolster Academy, and he's also a lecturer at Erasmus University in Rotterdam. I can cover all of the content that he was going to cover, but if you do have any more advanced mathematical questions, that's where I may struggle. So please do just let me know, and I can always come back to you and have a chat with the team. So I'll start with a short presentation. We'll look at what formative testing is, the benefits for students and teachers, some potential risks and the mitigations for those. And then we'll look at a practical example, actually of Lars's specific class at Erasmus, and a demo of the Bolster Academy platform. So what are the types of testing that we're talking about? So obviously, summative testing, as you know, is evaluative, comes at the end of the instructional period, and it is often very high stakes. It can also have multiple formats, so a final exam, or for example, a project for data analysis or something. That is something that we provide actually through our online mathematics admissions tests, and I'll talk about that briefly later, but the focus of this will be on formative testing. So diagnostic testing coming at the start of or throughout the instructional period. And also can have multiple formats, so games, quizzes, group activities. Both kinds of testing, of course, can be essential for a course, and they're all complementary as well. We know, and we've certainly seen this through working with some of our university partners, that reducing all the course evaluations to one summative test can increase students' math anxiety and trigger avoidance behaviours like procrastination, leading to poor performance. And we recommend to our teacher partners that they combine both formats. So in this workshop, we'll just focus on how formative tests can enhance mathematical courses and students' learning as well, while keeping them engaged. And we'll show you some of the ways that we do that through the platform. And we'll give you some practical strategies to implement formative assessment in your class, importantly, without increasing your workload. So the testing effects. So although assessing students might be the most popular reason to test students, it's not only an evaluation tool. Testing can promote learning instead of just evaluating it, as the testing effect shows. And you'll see here the APA Dictionary of Psychology defines the testing effect as the finding that taking a test on previously studied material leads to better retention than just restudying that material for an equivalent amount of time. And there are hundreds of psychological experiments that reveal that people who take tests perform far better than those assigned to other conditions, like just studying or not testing. But what they do find is that not all tests are equally effective. So short answer quizzes are more beneficial than other types like multiple choice quizzes. And this might be because recall is more beneficial for longer term memory than recognition. And we can show you some of the ways in which we tackle that challenge. In terms of benefits of formative testing, so first, as you see here, it enhances learning. So I mentioned already the testing effect, and tests activate retrieval processes that facilitate learning. So thanks to testing, knowledge is more effectively fixed in long-term memory and can be retained better. We also know that testing produces better organisation of knowledge. So taking tests can help with the conceptual organisation of the content for the student. And this benefit especially takes place where the questions are open-ended, letting the students be active, like you can in open-ended questions, is quite key to their learning process. We also know that a benefit is that it provides students and teachers with regular progress reports. So testing identifies gaps in knowledge. So when taking a test, students can realise what they already know and where their blind spots are, and it's a really effective way for the students to self-evaluate. And that's certainly some of the feedback that we've had via our teachers from students in their classes. And testing guides the learners and lets them focus more on what they need to improve. And in fact, there's again some specific ways we can do this in Bolster around adaptive learning. Also, testing provides feedback to instructors, so providing educators with actionable data on students' understanding of the subjects means that really provides them the insights to effectively adapt their future teaching in both the short and the longer term, and take timely intervention. And then lastly on here, so to incentivise students to structure and spread out their learning. So we also know that testing improves metacognitive monitoring. So if students self-test frequently, they can be more aware of which techniques work better for them, the most effective study strategies, how much time they'll need to master a topic, etc. They'll also be able to predict their outcomes more accurately too, something that also contributes to that reduction in math anxiety or test anxiety. We also know that testing causes students to learn more from the next study episode. So it has a positive impact on future learning sessions. And after taking a test and studying the material again, the results are better than without the test. So some of the papers that I referenced before, and I've got a reference sheet at the end of these slides that I'll share with Christian, who can pass them on afterwards. But Karpika and Rudiger, who are one of the sort of the authors behind some of these papers, recommend that students test themselves several times when learning. So they found out that repeated retrieval of information is really important for that long-term retention. And that's particularly crucial for those students that are perhaps going and taking some of the math skills, for example, that they might learn in a non-math major context. So economics, for example, or engineering. And we also know that frequent testing encourages students to study. So when students have frequent tests and discover the benefits from their own experience, they develop a positive attitude towards testing and feel more motivated to continue learning. They feel that step-by-step progression. And then I touched on it just then, testing improves transfer of knowledge to new contexts. So far from being only a requirement to pass a course, the knowledge students can obtain from testing can be applied to other situations like new subjects. So I mentioned there the kind of application in non-pure math subjects, or even day-to-day activities for more simple mathematical skills. Courses like math can often feel abstract and quite far removed from our realities, as I mentioned, particularly for those younger age groups. And making tests more engaging, to make tests more engaging, we also recommend using real-world problems. We do try and do that in our our foundational courses, for example, and it's something that hopefully you can apply in the classroom too. I should also mention that there are some possible negative consequences of testing that in the literature. So one potential risk is that students could process the information presented in the test in quite a superficial way and just passively memorize encapsulated content. And the most relevant disadvantage that students could acquire erroneous knowledge. So, for example, if students study the wrong items from multiple choice results. So testing shows that if a student gets the right answer on a multiple choice test, it does reinforce that right answer. But if they choose the wrong answer, it can also reinforce that wrong answer. So that's also a challenge. Fortunately, though, specific feedback for students after tests does solve both of those problems, and having the option for open question types, or indeed other more engaging question types, are also a solution for that challenge. So what are the practical obstacles? Why aren't so many people doing it? And formative testing does remain despite the obvious benefits, quite an underutilized learning and teaching strategy, although perhaps not for this group. But we found that's primarily for two reasons. One is the amount of extra grading involved on top of an already stretched teaching staff. And the second is limited classroom time. And this obviously became particularly acute during the pandemic, and we supported a lot of teachers through that process. Fortunately, though, digital innovation is coming on very, very quickly, and the feasibility of formative testing is increasing because of that. So, for example, when constructing the test, large question databases provide a growing source of material, meaning teachers don't need to invest time to set tests. And randomly generated exercises increase the repeatability of material. So that's helpful for both encouraging a mastery approach to learning and ensuring no two students in a class get the exact same test. And we found actually this has created quite a collaborative way of learning. Students can't simply share answers, they have to share how they arrived at an answer. And in terms of taking the test, easy scheduling means that individual students can take tests at their convenience. So I'll show you in an example in a moment where we provide quite an open time window for students to do that when they feel ready to do so. And remote testing capabilities are part of that, of course, and also add opportunity to employ this teaching model for hybrid teaching models or distance learning as well. And then lastly, grading the tests. Automated grading saves a huge amount of time, and we're beginning to calculate that now for our teachers to show them how much time they've saved, which is really great, and supports teachers to report that back to at faculty level. And automatically generated progress reports. They also provide the kind of new insights I mentioned earlier for no additional effort, really. And further, digital technology also enables personalization. So I alluded to adaptive learning earlier on, but students have got diverse levels and needs, as we know, and not every university is fully equipped to meet all of those. And creating tailored tests can make them feel much more understood. It can meet their different needs and help them fulfill their potential in a bit more of a dynamic way. And for this reason, we have added an adaptivity mode to our learning environment, where students are able rather to jump into exercise packages, and then depending on their performance in those exercises, the next content sort of lined up for them will adapt. So I wanted to just draw on an example from a university partner. So I mentioned earlier my colleague Lars was going to be giving this presentation, and he's also a lecturer at Erasmus University College, part of Erasmus University in Rotterdam. And we'll jump into an example of his one of his actual classes. So testing is frequently a useful way to let students learn content step by step. But there we go, there's a bit missing on the slide, there we go. And it'll ensure that they don't try to do everything at the last minute, which certainly in my experience as a student was a tendency I found it hard to fight. But besides this, it'll enable you to identify which students are struggling, so that you give them extra support in that timely manner I talked about before. This is a first-year mathematics course, and the course has been taught this way with formative testing and just sort of continual sort of test and learn approach, if you like, over the last several years. And we've had some great feedback from students and markedly improved results compared to earlier years. It's an 8-week course, and you can see here the structure. So there's a 2-hour lecture on the Monday, and that coincides with a diagnostic test. And I talked about the kind of adaptivity mode before. That then creates a kind of personalized set of exercises for the student that they can then practice in their own time and tackle the content. They'll have a 1-hour practical session later on in the week. Sorry, a 3-hour practical session later in the week. They'll have one of those sessions each week. And there's a midterm and there's a final exam. It is compulsory that students take these tests. So you'll see there's 2 types of formative tests here. One is the diagnostic test at the beginning of the week, and the last is the end of week quiz on the things they learned in that week. So students can dramatically see, quite clearly see their progress, as can the lecturer. And we've also found that this strategy reduces the pressure that they might feel and lets them process the content more calmly and deeply throughout the week. So that's that class, and I'll jump into in a moment the platform, but I do also just wanted to give you a bit of background, so I realized I didn't do that at the beginning, on who we are if you don't know us already. So we're an online testing and learning and testing environment for STEM. Maths is our specialty, but we also now branch out into the sciences. So we have physics courses, we have universities teaching chemistry courses on the platform, for example. And we also supply the math engine, if I can call it that, to a number of large publishers, publishers like Bloomsbury, for example, or Sonoma Learning, who are another European publisher. Our platform's designed to engage students and save teachers time, and we really develop courses and the platform on that philosophy. We started out as a spin-off from Eindhoven University, so via IEA Co-Ed, a professor there, who one or two of you may be aware of. And so, yeah, it started as a spin-off out of the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science. One of the things that really differentiates us from others is that we have a team of specialist in-house mathematicians, so both creating high quality courses but also supporting our teacher community. Our course design is really focused on those areas where students and teachers experience the most acute challenges, and that often tends to be in the kind of foundational first year courses, those kind of multi-faculty courses. We've got over 10 years of experience, and we're actually one of the Netherlands' fastest growing edtech companies right now. As you can imagine, we've experienced quite a bit of growth through COVID, and we've got now more than 60 universities and colleges around Europe, Australia, North America using the platform. All in all, it's about 265,000 students. We also have an online maths admissions test, and we run that for really all of the large universities in the Netherlands here. So it's a test that students can take anytime and anywhere, all safely proctored, and that's for students that don't have, for example, an A-level equivalent certificate. Perhaps they're coming from a country where it's not so easy to demonstrate that all of the knowledge required for the course is covered, and then universities simply refer them to us, and they can take a safely proctored exam online. It's something that we co-developed with leading admission offices actually just before COVID, but enabled them to process international students throughout that time, which was very useful for them, and we've had about 4,500 international students go through that so far. So let's dive straight in, and hopefully you can see my other tab. Let me know if you can't. I can see Christian nodding, so that's positive. So if you haven't seen it already previously, this is Bolster Academy. This is effectively what a student will see when they log in. So this is the kind of landing area. And you can see here, very much like a digital textbook, they have all of their all of the topics for each of the coming weeks of the course. This is a sort of live example of my colleague Lars's class at Erasmus University, and you can see he's helpfully broken it down into the actual timeframes that that he'll be teaching in. And in fact, we can provide author admissions, author rights, if you like, for the platform that enable you to adapt anything on here. So that could even be specific exercises, creating your own content, or even just doing things like changing the titles from week 6 to week 7. All of that is possible within the platform. You'll also notice that there's this kind of stethoscope icon here, and that's because Lars uses adaptivity mode for his class, and this is what I mentioned in terms of the diagnostic test that we can provide, and that's where students will run through a series of exercises, and their performance in those exercises dictates the cued exercises that are coming behind that. So many students do get a quite an individual experience, and they may well be coming from different backgrounds in terms of what they studied at school. Perhaps they studied internationally, as I mentioned, or maybe they didn't have, for example, an A-level in maths, which means they really are starting at week 1 rather than having the skills that really would see them through to week 4. So a couple of things I wanted to show you. First is how our exercises work. bear with me while I just move this icon over here so I can still click it. So I thought I'd jump into just a very simple exercise that can show you some of the real features and benefits of Bolster. So the first is that we recognize we're built on a math engine that recognizes mathematical equivalency. So if a student answers correctly, but not in the form that's being requested, the platform will recognize that and point students in the right direction. So for example, if I do something, this would be unusual for a student, of course, but it should give you an idea of what I mean. The system will give them a kind of positive feedback, if you like. So recognize that the answer is technically correct, but it's not the form that we're looking for, and point them in the right direction. What it will also do is recognize common mistakes and provide students with on-point feedback, much like a personal tutor would. So for example, what a lot of students may well do is they may well forget to bring down the minus sign, for example. And again, it will ask students to double check the signs in their calculation. Likewise, what a student's likely to do here, oh, I'll put it in correctly, is maybe they add to the exponent rather than take away. And again, the platform is going to recognize that and point students in the right direction. All of this is recorded. So in fact, you as a teacher can see all of students' attempts, and you can see what's happening and where students are making errors. But what's more is we, behind the scenes, use all of the anonymized data from students' attempts across those 265,000 students that we were talking about, and we use that to constantly improve the feedback that we provide students. Which route of feedback is taking them most quickly to the answer, and how are they most quickly achieving mastery with their courses. The other thing that really is fundamental to any online learning platform is automatic grading, and of course that's something that we offer. So if student answers correctly, great, they'll get that marked and it will take them through. They can also see exactly why they are correct as well. Students can also continue practicing, so they can simply reload the exercise, and we randomize all of our variables within our courses so that students can continually practice. And of course, the more advanced we go through this particular set of exercises, so the 16 exercises, if you like, in this set, 16 exercises in this set, but with randomization, that's many, many times over. If students are stuck, there's a couple of things they can do. First is they can take a quick look at the theory page that's attached to this particular set of exercises, and they can really try and understand how they get to an answer. And all of our theory pages come with fully worked out examples. And just as with exercises, you can reload examples, worked out examples in theory pages as well with new variables. So again, if one particular one's not making sense, that's another way that we can get around that particular challenge for students. If students still struggle, they can request a hint. So we have a hint button here. So this asks them to use the power rule and provides them with that rule. They can also go for another one here. So they actually show them, what the constant's equal to and what the exponent's equal to in this particular question. So we can really help nudge them along. Likewise, if they're really stuck, they can see the solution, and again, fully worked out rather than simply, the answer at the back of the book, for example, and they can reload that question. And until they've answered correctly, this won't turn from red on the left-hand side. So they'll get their own score based on that. What we can also do is add notes. So students could add notes if they have a question for the teacher, or they weren't sure, or if they were struggling on that particular one, they'd like them to cover it in the class. And we've also, it's not in this particular class, but we can activate it for any of our partners. We've also added the option for students to simply upload their working, taking a picture on their phone using a QR code that we have in the platform. So they can really easily add that on, particularly for those, if you want to set something that's a bit more involved than you could do online. We also have a built-in forum. It's not used for this particular class, but if students have a question, they can post it to a forum that other students can see and add answers in. Again, it will be randomized, but what they'll be able to see is the exact steps the student took, so they can provide on-point feedback as well. Hopefully that'll make sense. The one other thing to note is that you might have seen this at the bottom lurking around. We have a mathematical keyboard as part of the system. So here we cover every type of input that you might want to ever want to use in your courses. So you can see here the ones around function, logic, vectors, etc. So even things like matrices. And the real value of this, of course, is that something that we have seen time and again, and feedback from teachers where they've been using other platforms, is that students were becoming really disengaged if they were struggling to tackle the usability of the platform. If they are inputting answers that should be correct, but because of you know, a missing space or something like that, the platform was penalising them. And that was becoming quite a serious issue, and one that actually it was quite hard to define in terms of impact, but was definitely very relevant. So whilst there are keyboard shortcuts as well for those students that are a little quicker on platforms like these, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to input all of the relevant information. Also thought I'd just show you an example of one of our theory pages. So you saw one pop up that was for differentiation. Again, I've just used some of our simpler math courses just to really illustrate clearly how we do things, but we do go right up to some second year courses, linear algebra courses, for example. So this is one from one of our IB courses, for example, and you'll see that our theory pages are very simple. I mentioned the worked out solutions that come with all of our theory pages, and it is possible to ask questions, by the way, on the theory page to the teacher. And we provide all of our information in these boxes like this that have the opportunity to expand extra information if students would like to see examples. You'll also notice that, so for those of you that are familiar with GeoGebra, we have integrated applets, and that means that all of our visualizations, or many of our visualizations, are interactive. So this one, for example, students can simply use the slider to change the variables in the function here, and they can see what happens on the graph. And that's super helpful for particularly these foundation level programs where students that perhaps don't feel like they have a natural inclination for maths this can really help them visualize some of the more abstract concepts. I also wanted to show you some of the teacher functionality. So we've seen some of the student functionality through exercises and through pardon me, and through our theory pages, but also for teachers. This opens up a whole new reporting environment, something that you might have had to employ quite a lot of time, invest quite a lot of time to generate this kind of data. And you can see here a quick dashboard overview of the class. So you can see how students are getting on in terms of their overall average score. If this looks little low, although 65 I think is actually pretty strong, that of course includes the diagnostic tests, and so where students are getting straight to grips with the content. And you can see the overall average progress here. You'll also see, for example, a breakdown of student scores through content. So we can see here that actually students performed pretty consistently throughout, but did find it a bit tougher on constrained optimization. But you know, that comes to the end of the course, it might be expected. It's also possible to deep dive into some of these as well. So you can see where students perhaps haven't attempted. Again, a great reason to intervene and perhaps have a chat with that student. Likewise, you can see the students that are really acing everything, and perhaps they just simply need to be encouraged to keep going. Again, you can see some students have struggled with particular topics despite performing very well in previous ones, and that suggests perhaps a lack of engagement that week. And again, I know my colleague Lars really adapts his conversations with students based on these results, and he's found it particularly helpful. You can also see test scores. So you see here some of the test scores on adaptive diagnostic tests. Of course, those are going to be a bit lower. If we change that type to the weekly quizzes, we'd see that much higher. But again, allows you a quick snapshot at results there. Assignments are very light tests, but more homework based. But that's something else that you can set through the platform. I also want to show you how to create a test. Of course, it's all been about formative testing, so how easy is it to do one? Well, the first thing to note is, and this is something my colleague does that saves him an enormous amount of time each year, is when he's taught a class successfully one year, he simply copies over all of that material for the next year. It takes him 5 minutes or less, and he's got a whole class set up with all of the tests from the previous year. No additional work required. And of course, those tests are kind of refreshed, if you like, through randomization and the pooling of examples that of exercises that we have in our question bank, but we also refresh that question bank on a regular basis. There's also the opportunity to create exercises. So if there's a particular area where that's either just relevant for his study program or he feels could be added, he can create that exercise himself. And it's whilst there's some skill level involved, if you're already creating exercises somewhere else or in a different package, you'll very, very quickly get up to speed on this. And about half of our university partners actually do author to some extent on the platform. That might just be adapting terminology so it fits with their preferred sort of terminology in the university. However, yeah, it's very easy to do. We have some that go on and like at the University of Amsterdam here, that create entire study programs through the platform. Creating tests is very easy. So it's possible to use a pre-existing test if you've created one on the platform. You can use an outside exam if you want to import from a particular in a particular format. So that's also possible if you have something in LaTeX, for example. Or you can create one from the course material. So if I want to do it from course material, I can do that here. I can then jump in and select exercises. So for example, if I want to do a weekly quiz based on the basics of mathematics, I might want to start perhaps a little further up, but I can start adding these in here. Of course, if I click here, this simply adds all 15 exercises, but it might well be that in this section, expanding brackets, you simply want students to take 3 exercises from this pool of 15. It's also possible to add points for trickier exercises. This particular class is set up with increasingly challenging questions, if you like. So it may well be that for the tests, we only want to take, the last 5 or 6. But if we're not sure what the exercises look like, we can preview them here. So we can see here that this one is simply about expanding brackets. If we come a little further up, we can see this adds a bit of complexity with an increasing number of variables in the brackets. So yeah, really simple. We can then add extra sections if we want to add in, for example, information of exercises on factorizing. And again, we could pull a few from this as well. So really easy and quickly to add questions into the test. We do have language settings as well. So if you're not teaching English, there are opportunities we've created. For example, Spanish translations, and obviously we have availability in Dutch as well, and in some instances French, and some of the Scandinavian languages. You'll see here date and time. So I talked in my slides about adding flexibility for students, and you'll have seen from Lars's class that there's a weekly quiz that becomes available after the practical session on a Thursday. And so if we took Thursday as the example and made it available simply that evening, let's say from 6 p.m, and then we want it completed by Sunday evening. Let's see where we are, PM. We can simply say before midnight on Thursday, and just set to the relevant time zone. We can give the test a name. So if we call this weekly quiz 1, for example. We can also provide information before the students begin. What's the test going to cover? Do they need to have, for example, a calculator with them, although we can provide an on-screen calculator in the settings here? And do we want to give them instructions during the test? So do we want to keep something in mind that they've been taught in the class? Yeah, is there anything else that they need to know? And we can also say that we want this to be shown at all questions. We can also trigger messages afterwards. So if students scored very well, for example, so let's say they've got over 70%. We can give them a well done message. Likewise, if they've scored, let's say less than 40, then we can say let's chat after Monday's lecture. All of that's possible. Oh, it would help if I went. There we go. I'll just move that there. So we can make tests immediately available or unavailable for students. We can also give them multiple attempts. So remember, the objective of this formative testing is to help students toward mastering skills. It may well be that we want to give them a couple of attempts if they struggled on the first one. We can set the duration of the test here, assign passing grades, and we can also provide feedback afterwards so students can see where they went wrong. We can also change the mode, so students get the score later or afterwards. We can provide the option for students to upload files, which I talked about previously. So, for example, their notes for a particular topic. Oh, is that a question from someone? I don't think so. We also have some accessibility functionality in here as well. So we have Read Speaker, for example, for those students that are hard to type. We can also randomize tests or even provide some additional security. So I mentioned previously that some universities use our platform for summative testing. So it could be that they use a computer room, although we also have more technical options as well in terms of supporting safe browsers, for example. Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that's everything, I think. Just check if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's everything. So I suppose over to everyone if there are any questions. We've got 15 minutes or so left, oh, I can see there's a few things in the chat. So you asked about the editor. So I can show you if you like, Lillian, because I have author rights here. Let me see if I can jump into, let's look at some exercises. Okay, so here's an example of an exercise. In fact, I can view exercise here so you can see exactly which one it is. Okay, so this is from our calculus course, and it's a question about antiderivatives. So if I just come back here to the exercise editor, so this is where teachers can either insert or create exercises, and you'll see that there's different levels of complexity here. So here are all of our kind of general And I'm no specialist, by the way, but what I can say is that we run author workshops for all of our teachers that that create questions here. But you'll see, if I come back to things like positive feedback here, we have a number of automated feedback rules triggered here. And again, this is where our platform understands the kind of mathematical basis for the answer. And you can see here that there is, you know, some basic sort of coding that required here as well. And again, these are feedback rules. These are ones triggered depending on what people, depending on what a student inserts. But very happy if you're more interested to take a look and sit down with one of our authors and cover any of your questions. You can see how we're structured here in terms of triggering feedback rules. Likewise with solutions. So here we define the solution. And all of this can simply be previewed. But it's really about how deep you want to go. As I mentioned, we have teachers that are simply changing terminology in theory pages and the odd exercise, to teachers that are very comfortable creating full exercise packages if they feel that there's something extra that they want to add for their course. But we do have a good and growing range of courses as well, which, as I mentioned previously, anyone is more than welcome to run a trial period of, and just let me know if that's something you'd be interested in doing. I mentioned previously as well, of course, our publisher partners are using the platform. So there's various ways that we connect into their platforms, but pretty much all of them edit in this authoring environment as well. So it's used very widely. We also have a Slack channel for authors, so about 300 authors on that channel, where they can share questions or ideas. And likewise, we have the in-house team of mathematicians that can support if you want to get up and running with this kind of thing. Does that answer your question, Liam? I went into a bit more detail there, but I thought it was best to show you.
Kind of, but not to worry. We'll take it offline. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, no problem. Are there any other questions that anyone had at this point?
Okay,
sorry, Christian, go ahead.
Which she might be about to tell you. So
yeah, I added a question to the Moodle questions thing, which was basically,
oh, sorry,
how, no, not to worry, how we found that students were not answering the weekly quizzes. To the best of intentions, we as academics might set these up because we know the testing effect is good, we know it helps the students to understand, but the students themselves are not accessing the tests. So through all the experiences of people who have been using these systems, or to anyone else who's in the Zoom call right now, has anyone had any good strategies for encouraging the students to use the weekly tests for their own good?
I can only speak with a similar experience. No, we have to make it worth it for the students. So we actually ascribe marks for the course with that, and you know, otherwise the students, you know, they don't really see it in the same terms as we'd like them to see it, in terms of their own growth and preparation for summative assessment. So.
Yeah, I would just add that's the experience we've had back from teachers that have done it successfully. They've simply integrated it into the overall evaluation of the student's performance on the course. So even if it's a small percentage, if you like, of the marks or otherwise, yeah, they simply have that as part of the overall evaluation, even if it's weighted towards the summative assessment in a higher stakes environment. Stephen, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, it was just really to respond to that last question as well about our experience in Edinburgh. So Ours was a bit different. So we have, there was a talk yesterday about using stack assessment in a complex analysis course at the University of Edinburgh. So you can check that out if you're interested. But essentially, we found that the design of the course overall was very important. So we had quite high engagement with students taking quizzes, which were not for credit. But I think that was down to the fact that there was no other way for the students to engage with the course apart from doing the quizzes, right? So, for example, when students all came together for lectures, the lecturer was almost assuming, not so explicitly as that, but assuming knowledge of everything that was in the quizzes already and not going over it again. So if students very quickly get the message that they're just not going to get on very well in the course unless they do this work, then we found that to be quite effective.
Indeed, and I think there's a bit of a similar message in this example that of Lars's here, where they say that it's simply expected of students and it's very clearly communicated, but they also this is where they access everything for that course in that environment. So they get messages from their teacher here, they see all of their tests scheduled, so it's very clear when they have one and when it needs to be done. Likewise with assignments, and so yeah, it's all there for them. Some of the feedback we have had actually has been around the UI of the user interface that we have here, and the general experience of the students. If they find it quite intuitive, that can remove a number of barriers as well. I mentioned briefly in how that works in the exercise, but also just in terms of being able to click around and find the things that they need to do. They can very quickly be up and running. We can integrate with Moodle and other LMSs very easily, but it's also the case that even just for trialing, it's very easy to just do this through a web browser, and students just get a link that automatically enrolls them into a class. So they're up and running in no time whatsoever. It's really one automatically generated email. Lillian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for confirming that, Adam, and Zach and Stephen. In answer to your response, what we found was that what we're finding is that sometimes when students miss some flipped material, I kind of sense that the quizzes are being used in a flipped way, that students feel like they can't catch up, and then actually attendance at lectures drop off altogether. So they miss 1 week and then feel they can't catch up, and then I know this is beyond maths in general. This is for anything that is slightly technical in content, really. But again, if anyone has experience of any good ways to encourage students to work at it and pick it up, that would be great. Zach's shaking his head. I'm asking for a unicorn.
Yeah, this is a wider one, and I've seen different experiences at different universities. But yeah, I don't know if anyone in the group. Yeah, indeed, if only there were. But yeah, I wonder if, certainly from my experience, we'll just focus on maths. It's many little things, but I don't know if on top of the things that Stephen and Zach already mentioned, but I don't have too much else to add on here. The integration with the LMS is helpful as well, of course, if everything is in one place.
We're nearly at the end. I wrote one quite technical question early on, and then you showed the authoring interface and answered it. So I'll ask a different question, which is even more technical.
Try my best.
So it looks like it uses Maxima internally as the computer algebra system. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So people with experience with Stack will probably get straight on with this. My question was about how the feedback is produced, whether each line is individually programmed into each question, or if there are generic messages in response to common errors that apply to all questions. It looked to me like each specific line was particular to that question. Is that right?
We do have automated feedback based on sort of groups of things. So the wrong sign, for example, or other quite standard issues that apply generally. And then on top of that, we also are able to code specific feedback. As I mentioned, there are different types of feedback rules that we have, and we analyze very carefully the feedback rules that ultimately lead to the shortest path to a solution. And then we kind of promote those feedback rules over others because we know them to be more effective. We are also adding in, we're doing a project right now, and we're adding in things that highlight where the error is, for example. So if there is a minus sign where it shouldn't be, again, at a very basic level, where minus sign where there shouldn't be, it will highlight that particular error. So it really does focus in on the issue that the students had with their answer. So really, I'm trying to mimic how a personal tutor would work with them. But also, yeah, support them to master it quite quickly. But quite a few, yeah, like I say, quite a few have feedback rules sort of built into the if you like, that you can then add in, if you like, and trigger them. And you just simply need to add the parameters in. Okay.
So there's it's configurable. Exactly.
Yeah, we have evaluation types, if I can call it that. So here you'll see the different feedback template types, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So this is just a list based on this particular course, but you'll see that there are some here, and that kind of shortens the time to getting a question up and running.
Yeah, so you would just pick and choose the ones that are relevant for your question, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So here you can see, yeah, different types of evaluation here. So math evaluation.
Yeah.
And here contains,
okay,
brackets or something
similar.
Hopefully that's clear, but yeah.
Cool. It's a problem we have in numbers that about how much built-in stuff you have, and having a built-in library of feedback options is it's one of the many things on the to-do list.
Definitely, it's a great thing to have in order to scale, if you like. And
yeah, looks good. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the hour. I think I'll just remind everybody that there is a section on the course website for Bolster Academy where you can find links to the website, links to sign up for a demo account. I think for anyone who has esprit d'escalier or comes up with a question after the fact, or people watching this on recording, you can still put questions in the questions thread on the conference site, and hopefully Adam will watch that.
Yes, absolutely. Please do share any questions, and if you'd like to learn more, just let me know. Okay,
great. So thanks, Adam, for taking over at short notice. There's a lot of illness around. We've had a few speakers dropping out. So thank you. And I will just end by sharing the program for the afternoon. What have we got this afternoon? 3 shorter talks on a variety of things. Colleagues pretty much around the world, I think. So come back for that in a few hours' time. That's 4 o'clock UK time, 1500 UTC. We'll see you then.